And FBI Director Kash Patel says the suspect who allegedly shot and killed conservative activist Charlie Kirk is now in custody. That's according to a statement from him on X. Joining us now is retired FBI Special Agent Greg Shaffer. He's currently the Principal and Chief Operation Officer of the Active Shooter Prevention Project. Greg, thank you so much for joining us as we unpack this tragedy. Now, there is actually a press conference right now in Utah about the shooting. Walk us through what's the latest in that presser. What do we know so far?
Well, they're saying, like you just said, Kash Patel announced that they have a suspect in custody. They also have some information that they gleaned from CCTVs on campus that could also help in the investigation. And the governor of Utah did go on national news and state that and remind everybody that Utah does have the death penalty. So, it's a tragic day for Utah, a tragic day for America. And, I don't know if you knew this or not, but I was actually the security director for Turning Point USA and for Charlie Kirk Security for 7 years, from 2015 to 2022.
And Greg, on that note, digging into that, what do these events typically entail security-wise?
Yeah, Charlie Kirk, is a private citizen, and Turning Point USA is a private company, so they don't get the police protection or the protection of the federal government from the Secret Service or Homeland Security or FBI and like that. All the security for Turning Point USA and for Charlie Kirk is paid for by that organization. So security is a very expensive thing to have, especially when it's full time. And what they do in these prove me wrong campus visits is they'll open up to the entire campus. As you can see from the videos, it's a very open venue. He usually sits under a tent, and he will have a 5-man detail doing close perimeter security for him. If you look at some of the videos, you can see 2 large gentlemen in front of the stage. He always had an individual, who used to work for me, on Charlie's right-hand shoulder, and then you had another 2 individuals probably behind that tent. So you had a close perimeter security of about 5 personnel. That is about all that he would travel with for these events, and then they would also work with and coordinate with the campus police. Now, not to disparage campus police officers, but most college campuses have pretty poor security and poor police forces that are undermanned and underfunded. I did hear a report that the campus police said they had 6 officers on duty. I'm assuming most of those officers were doing crowd control and traffic control, not really there for security of Charlie Kirk. Again, security for Charlie himself was by his private security company. And then, it's hard to, when you get these events, you get close in security, you try to cover your principal up close, but this shot came from somewhere like 200 yards away. That is almost impossible to defend against. Unless you have counter sniper teams and have an intense amount of manpower and money to back up that manpower, protecting somebody from 200 yards away is incredibly difficult, if not impossible.
And Greg, given that you've worked with Charlie Kirk, from your perspective, did he face more hostility than normal speakers would at universities?
It was always contentious, but he thrived on that. He would always make the announcement during these events. If you disagree with what I'm saying, you have front of the line privileges. He wanted to engage with those that disagree with him. He wanted to have that conversation to try to change their mind or for them to prove him wrong. Hence the name of the entire campus visits was a Prove Me Wrong campaign. So, he was always looking to engage with those that he disagreed with. But in today's political environment, he always knew he had a target on his back. But I don't think he would ever, admit that he was a target of assassination. And, my heartfelt prayers and my thoughts go out to Erica, his lovely wife, and his 2 beautiful young kids. I'm heartbroken over this, and the nation should be in mourning because we lost an incredibly intelligent young man who was really making America great again on the coattails of President Trump.
And what will federal law enforcement have to do to figure out exactly what happened? There was a large crowd of students there as Charlie spoke. What needs to be assessed here?
Well, first and foremost, they need to find the exact location of where the shot was fired, and hopefully that site will then glean some kind of evidence. Powder burns, shell casings, fingerprints, cameras near wherever that shot was fired, cameras near that site to catch the perpetrator as he was leaving or coming. Maybe get license of a car that he was driving out of. So first and foremost, is just locate the exact location of where the shot was fired, and then just do an analysis of all the different videos from cell phones that were taken during the event. The FBI will collect all those cell phones of people that attended the event and look for anything that might provide them some information and intelligence of who might have committed this heinous crime.
And Greg, when we talk about accountability here, who do you expect authorities to look at to figure out what went wrong?
Well, private security is going to be the first one. I know the private security firms out of Texas. Um, you know, what was their authority in Utah? Who did they talk to? What was the operations plan? They're going to delve into, what were the plans that they had in place, the private security firm had in place, and were those plans, enough to, obviously they weren't enough to cover any contingencies. But again, from 200 yards away, it is virtually impossible to defend against that unless you are the United States Secret Service. Somebody's going to have to take the brunt of the blame on this, and unfortunately, it's going to be his private security company.
And what do you think needs to happen now? How do you hope that law enforcement, but also Americans as a whole, respond to what happened today?
Well, with the two Trump assassination attempts and then this one, if I was a conservative political pundit, I would definitely hire my own private security firm. We've gotten to a point today in America where, because you have political views that are not agreed upon by other members of the far left, they're having, violent acts taken upon them. We've gotten to a place in America where we need to take a good hard look at ourselves, and we need to step back and get rid of some of this vitriol between left and right, and Republican and Democrat, and red and blue. It didn't used to be like this. The vitriol has just gotten to a point now where they're assassinating those they disagree with, and we got to get to a point in our nation where that's no longer there.
And when it comes to bringing down that rhetoric, what would you like to see from political leaders from both sides of the aisle?
Oh, absolutely. I think, especially from the left, the Schumers and the Pelosi's and Hakeem Jeffries, they need to speak out against this vehemently. I mean, they cannot be too vocal or too loud, to speak out against this. And instead, what we've seen in the past is they almost double down and encourage more violence. Maxine Waters and her vitriol, and people like her just going out there and saying, get in their face. Don't let them do this if you see them in a restaurant, or at a gas station, to take action. The left, the leaders of the left, the leaders of the Democratic Party need to speak out, stand on a pedestal and demand that their followers and their like-minded to stop these violent acts. And then, of course, the president and all the Republicans need to do the same thing with any acts of violence against the far left.
Well, Greg Shaffer, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.